We are back on Morning Line. My guest is John Harris with the Tennessee Firearms Association. We're on the Plus. We're also streaming live on Facebook at newschannel5.com. We've got some calls for you, John, and some comments here. A lot of people just offering opinions on different things we're talking about here, and suggesting different books to read. Have you ever read Lieutenant Colonel Grossman's book On Killing? Have you heard of that?
No, I've not read that.
He just said there's research on the topic. I'm not familiar with it, but let's go to Ann. Ann, good morning.
Good morning.
Hey, Ann.
Approximately 6 months ago, a business here in Davidson County had an employee that became disgruntled or terminated. I don't remember which. The owner had a carry permit, but he did not lock his gun up. The employee came into the business knowing where that gun was, and he killed himself in the business. Explain to me where a gun is supposed to be kept inside a business when the owner has a carry permit, because people can gain access to those guns. And explain to me why the owner of that business was not charged with a crime.
Okay, and by the way, as you answer that, I think parallel to that can be some of the idea of arming teachers. And I don't know if they're necessarily always carrying them, but there's some concern that, kids are. They get into everything. And, how about making sure that the guns are safe if a school is allowing a teacher to carry a weapon, or as she says, the business there, to make sure it doesn't get into the hands of someone who shouldn't have it?
Well, we have, and we have had in this country for a long time, general liability standards that derive out of the concept of negligence. We don't have a specific law that requires someone who has a pocket knife or a kitchen knife or a gun to store it, restrain it, or secure it in any particular fashion, with one exception, and that is if you leave it in your car. Okay? But at a business like this, it's considered private property. It's considered something that the owners, the people that work there, have discretion over. And so if in that context, the issue becomes, was the person who had authority over the weapon somehow negligent? And negligence could give rise to civil liability, but just like in reckless homicide, it could also give rise to potential criminal liability. And I don't know the facts of this particular circumstance, but the standard that would be applied by law enforcement or the decedent's family, if they wanted to do something about it, would be, did the owner somehow commit negligence? Okay.
Did you see the crazy story? I think it was out of Pennsylvania, where they're thinking about how they can arm the schools and the teachers.
The rocks.
A bucket of rocks in the closet.
Yeah. And then, we've got safer rocks that are bean bags.
There's a guy in there with a gun, and you've got a bucket of rocks. And you want him to try. Some things are just beyond ridiculous on that front. All right, let's go to James. James, good morning. Hi, James.
Hey,
what's on your mind?
Y'all touched on a couple of things with the bump stock and the number of the big magazines. My biggest thing is I was in Vietnam, 68, 69. I was in Iraq, 04 and 05. And what makes that AR-15 an assault weapon is the number of rounds going down range. And that can cover a lot. That being said, my biggest thing that I'm stating is, a person with a felony, does he still have the right to buy ammo? Should we control the amount of ammo persons could purchase? That way, that guy was able to save those people temporarily because the guy was changing his magazine.
We're talking about James Shaw Jr. in the Waffle House incident. Right. If you're a felon, can you buy ammo? I don't know.
They don't do any background checks on ammo purchases other than an age limit.
Okay, so those can be purchased. It's interesting you talked about that case there, and several people, just posting and things. Everyone's got strong opinions. There's people out there that won't go shopping or go to an establishment that's a gun-free zone. Whatever, I mean, and that being that if it's a gun-free zone, there's not someone there to protect you if it happens. It's kind of interesting that James Shaw, is obviously a hero today. By the way, he's going to be on the Ellen show, and but he wasn't armed. He came out at the right time. I think indeed while that guy's gun either jammed or was reloading and
there was a pause in the shooting.
Yeah, what do you think? But I mean, are you one of these people that, well, it says gun-free zone, I'm not going in there? And you know as well as I do, gun-free zones are posted, but concealed carries, like you said all along when we passed the thing about parks and everything, guns have always been there. Okay, they're concealed, and there's guns in places that are gun-free zones all the time. Just no one knows it.
I frankly wouldn't be surprised if, in fact, some evidence comes out at some point that there was a gun in that Waffle House that night.
I've heard the same thing.
Yeah.
Have you heard that?
I have unverified.
There have been unverified rumors that there may have been others in there who were, maybe armed, that it was captured maybe on some of the surveillance video, which was covering everything. But I don't know that that's true.
Well, it's not, and the video's not been released.
No, and it won't be. No. I mean, I'm sure it's horrendous. And Waffle House has cameras everywhere, covered everything. And I've heard from people who have seen portions of it. And you see Shaw come out and take the guy down. You see everything. It's very, 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 very hard to watch. But anyway, yeah. Are you one of those people then when it comes to that? I mean, what do you think when you see a sign that says gun-free zone?
Well, I think that becomes an issue of consumer pressure. You know, there's a lot of, it doesn't matter what the business is, there's lots of competition. And so we had this issue come up years ago when they started permitting in Tennessee with some big retail stores that posted. Yeah. And our approach was, it doesn't do any good to just go, I'm not going in there, unless you tell somebody. So we've encouraged our membership, if they want to go down that path, to at least go in and tell the manager, I used to shop here and I'm not going to shop here anymore. I'll go to your competitor. Yeah. Right. And then they know there's consequences to the signage. Yeah, sure. But I think, aren't there others that, well, I mean, people want to be law-abiding citizens. I understand that. Some do. But there are those who maybe have it and it's concealed, and they're going in anyway, and that's happening all the time. Well, and the law expressly recognizes that. We've got a statute that says if you're illegally in possession of a weapon, maybe because of a posting ban, or maybe even because you're a felon, and the only reason that comes to be discovered is because you justifiably used it in self-defense, you can't be charged with illegal possession. Yeah. So the law acknowledges it. Right, which is, I think it should, in that regard, and under those circumstances, I agree. Let's go to Jim. Hi, Jim. Are you there, Jim?
Oh,
hey.
Yeah, how are you?
Good. Good morning, Jim.
I thought you might should talk about the reason why it's in the Constitution to bear arms. The right to bear arms has nothing to do with hunting or shooting or any of that. It's the right to own a weapon in case the government gets too tyrannical. You have the legal right to overthrow it. Remember, when the revolution was going on, the British wanted to take guns. If they had taken the guns, we couldn't have had a revolution. That's why it was put into the Constitution. That's why they should not ban them. That's why we should have access to even military-type guns.
Do you honestly think if the government in this day and age, and it was different, you're right with what you say, that you're going to be able to defend yourself with your little AR when they send a Harrier to your house to just obliterate your home? You would have no chance. Zero. You have zero chance of defending yourself against our government if they come after you.
Bunch of you together, then you got a chance against a Harrier.
I mean, there was someone on Facebook too here who mentioned, well, they allow big banana clips so you can defend yourself from the government. Look, I understand the big picture there, but John, you're a rational guy, all right? And and I understand the argument he's making back then, I think was right. But in this day and age, are we arming ourselves because we're afraid the government is going to become a dictatorship and we're going to go after them? If that's your reason for wanting to own all these military, I think it's insane.
Well, I think that there are some clearly that view as an element of their right.
Well, and that's how it was written. Yeah. I agree with him. Yeah. I think that was part of it.
That was part of the, and it was a political right, okay? Scalia said in the Heller decision that it's a right that pre-exists our Constitution, that the Constitution, the Second Amendment, doesn't create the right. It recognizes its existence and it prohibits government infringement of it. Okay. Okay, that's what Scalia says about the second. All right. Now,
Supreme Court Justice.
Supreme Court Justice.
Antonin Scalia.
Correct. Now, most people that I know, own guns because they enjoy shooting them. They're hunters. They want them for self-defense. Right. I can't think of, a group that I deal with that's sole reason for ownership is to be prepared for, Washington to invade Tennessee again. you know.
See, I mean, now I understand having it for self-defense. If it's not from the government, maybe from criminals and stuff, that all makes sense to me. But the argument, and for some people it maybe isn't insane and it makes sense to them and maybe they're living in fear or whatever, but the idea of arming yourself and like he said, even making all military weapons, any weapon available to any civilian so that we can defend ourselves if for some reason our own government comes after us, I guess, does that resonate? Well,
yeah, it does. And let me tell you why. You know, there are two old Tennessee Supreme Court cases. I say old. One's 1840, the other's 1871. Okay, but moving forward from that address that issue, and they specifically say the reference to arms in the Constitution, the concept of constitutional arms, are military grade. What would a civilian soldier need? Okay, if they went into battle.
Yeah.
But you come to 1939 and the U.S. Supreme Court looked at that issue in a decision called Miller that doesn't get talked a lot about today because it results in some uncomfortable conclusions for gun control advocates. And what the challenge in Miller was the government had passed in '34 the National Firearms Act, which restricted machine guns, short barrel rifles, short barrel shotguns, and some other stuff. But the restriction was only the imposition of a tax.
Okay.
Okay. They charged a $200 tax when you bought it, thinking that would limit the proliferation. And there was a couple of guys that were charged with taking a hacksaw and sawing the barrel off of a shotgun to a length shorter than the statute said they could have without paying the tax.
Okay.
And the defense was, this was in federal court, the Second Amendment says I can own this and that the government cannot regulate it, cannot infringe it. And the trial judge, the federal district judge, agreed with them. Okay? And dismissed the criminal charges. That case went directly to the U.S. Supreme Court. The only person to file a brief in the U.S. Supreme Court was the United States Department of Justice.
Okay.
Okay? The United States Department of Justice argued that the cases were unanimous in holding that arms, as referenced in the Second Amendment, were those suitable for military purposes and cited the Tennessee cases. Their argument was a sawed-off shotgun was not used by the military and was therefore not protected to civilian ownership. And the Supreme Court's response to that was, there's nothing in the record to tell us, there was no evidence in the trial court as to whether or not military used sawed-off shotguns. So the court sent it back for that to be determined. Okay? But the problem that creates for the gun control advocate is, if the Department of Justice is saying arms are those protected arms are those suitable for military purposes, and the court sends the case back to determine whether or not this sawed-off shotgun is something a soldier would use, it really takes away the premise that no civilian should own military-grade weapons.
Interesting. You know all these cases, don't you?
I've read
That's
them.
interesting. Yeah, you know, I mean, listen, we'll take a break on that note. We've got more calls coming as well as more comments on Facebook as we have our final segment with John Harris. He knows his stuff right after this.